Welcome back to the Enduring Minds podcast. I am Evan Birch. Unfortunately, our co host today, Jason Bahamundi, is on another engagement traveling, so he will not be joining us. Super excited today. We have an amazing guest on board, uh, very near and dear to my heart because he has a dog that he runs with as well. And his story is a unique one. He has a film that came out last year entitled George that followed his medical journey alongside his dog. Dog's name is George Pfeiffer Tonkin. So I would love to bring on Jacob Tonkin, who is a UK-based fell runner from the Lake District in the Cumbrian area, and he turned his diagnosis of Crohn's disease into a deeper partnership with his sport alongside his best friend George. So, in saying that, I don't want to give you too much information. We're going to have a great conversation with Jacob today, and I look forward to seeing where it goes. So, I'll just bring Jacob online here. Jacob, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I always like to start off the podcast. I mean, told everybody what you do, but I would like to start off the podcast with just a simple question. Who is Jacob?
Oh, I have been asking myself that question an awful lot recently. I'm Jacob Tonkin. I'm a fell runner. I am a I'm born and bred Keswickian, which is the only time you actually pronounce the W in Keswick, is if you're from there. The story behind that being that if you go up to a cow and say W, you purse your lips and the cow will try and kiss you. And there's a lot of dairy farmers around here. So yeah, I'm a very proud Cumbrian and Keswickian. Fell runner, try my best. Come from a bit of a history of fell runners in my family, with my nan and granddad being big fell runners and orienteers. And I just try and share that love and enjoyment for my sport wherever I go and try and encourage as many people as I can. I just live slightly outside of town now, and I am a kind of like an osteopath. Like a body mechanic is my real job. So I have lots of runners and people who I end up treating, and very unique like job because I get to help people physically, but a lot of what I do is also through conversation, talk, and you've got the side as well, which has put me in good stead. I feel when I did get a diagnosis of having long-term chronic injury because I'm good at talking about that sort of thing, which I think has been a massive part of my recovery. So I've probably gone off a massive tangent already there, but
No, it's good. It's good. I think it's nice to hear again. A lot of our guests that we've had on are, I will say, North American based. So when I came across your film, I instantly had a connection with you. Obviously, my film that's coming out and actually going to be in the same film festival as yours was last year at the Kendall Mountain Film Festival, which you're right around. I think you said you're about an hour from there. So there was just instant connection, and I was like, I got to talk to Jacob. So thank you for reaching out and connecting back with me because I think there's just like an instant rapport I think that was created just watching your film. So for people that don't know what fell running is, what is the like technical definition of fell running, and how would you describe fell running?
Yeah, so it's a million-dollar question in what is fell running. And fell running, I would always say it's actually more of a state of mind than anything else, because you like road running's road running. It's very defined, like you don't stray off that road. Trail running in the Lake District is a bit similar to road running in that you are often on a set route. You can't stray from that route. You're often on a path or a trail or a trod. But you don't necessarily go to many summits of the fells. So fells are just what we call our mountains that we've got. So they are special to us, but they're not a special height or anything like that. They're just all the fells. And fell running is a sport which is how fast can you get up and down those fells and how many fells can you link in together. So there's often not a route. It's a bit of a crossover between orienteering and trail running, in that you're often not on a set route. You've got to find these checkpoints or summits or tops, but you can usually go whichever way you want to go in between them. So it opens up this whole sort of tactical, you got to think of like an orienteer. You've got to be able to run like a road runner at times. You've got to be able to spank it down the fells. But as a group of people, we are the most inclusive people in a sport that I've ever met. And we all have a real deep appreciation of what we're all doing is actually really bloody hard, because a lot of the fells are really steep. Mm-hmm. And there's people who are starting off and they're 18 doing the same races as people who are in their 80s. And I always think, would I rather be winning races in my 20s and my 30s, or would I rather still be running into my 80s? And for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer which one I'd do. So, yeah, it's a very interesting group of people that you get that come and do it. And a lot of people dedicate their whole lives into knowing sort of one small range of fells or mountain range. And so I live just underneath Helvellyn, which is the third highest fell in the country in England. And that range goes all the way over to Threlkeld, which is all on the Bob Graham round. And I've sort of taken it on my mission on these last 5 years of living in this film here, that I want to know my back garden better than anyone. So I don't run on many paths. I'm just up. Where's this? Where's that? Oh, look, what's that over there? And you're just running through heather, through bracken, through, great big tussocks and long grass down scree. So it is more of a state of mind in that it just opens up a whole other world of freedom that I don't think trail running or road running does.
Yeah, I would love to see your heat map. That's what I would love to see. I imagine that if you were to put your years of heat maps together, it would probably just cover the entire section.
Well, that's what I would hope. So
yeah. So obviously getting into fell running. So when did you start fell running? Was it early on, like when you were younger? When did you get into that sport specifically?
Yeah, well, I've been racing and properly training for about 10 years now. So I'm 32 now, so I started when about 22. But I grew up in a very outdoorsy family. So my nana and granddad they used to run one of the youth hostels. There were the wardens there. And they were just lived for being out on the fells. Then they raised my mum and her two sisters. And they grew up the Borrowdale Valley, which is, as the crow flies, about 3 miles from here. But to drive there, it takes about an hour because you've got to go up squiggly roads. My dad he's a very good climber. He was, up until recently, the local scout leader. So we've always had it in us that we've been always going out and doing stuff. But when you're a kid and your mum and dad say, "Come on, I'm taking you up here," you don't want to do that. You want to be out with your mates, don't you? You don't really want to be hanging around with your mum and dad at the weekends. So I was almost like begrudgingly doing it. But I moved away for university and realised, I can open my bedroom windows and I can see the highest mountains in the country. And now I've opened them up and I can just see big concrete buildings. And I was like, oh, I've made a bit of a mistake here. So when I was at university, I did suffer with depression quite a bit. And I just didn't feel right. And I think it's because I've been taken away from where I'm most comfortable. And the Lake District brings out the best in me. And I think when you are trying to find the best in you, you're wanting to say, well, what can I actually do? Can I do bigger and better? I'd cycled Land's End to John O'Groats when I was, so that's like the bottom of England to the top of Scotland. Cycled that when I was 19 with my friend. Actually, the whole thing dressed as Spider-Man as well, which is a long story. But and then I came back from that and I just kind of fell out of love with cycling because, you go out on your bike, you get a puncture or your chain snaps and it's just a bit of a faff. Whereas running, you just put your shoes on and off you go. And if you run around here, even if you run on the roads, you've got to do a lot of steep up and downs. So I thought, well, really, I should go up there and go and have a look at the fells. And my dad had already taken me as a kid, and I had all these routes embedded into my mind. And I just went and did it. And my dad would come back and say, "Oh, you've just done the Cordale Horseshoe." And I said, "Oh." And he goes, "I took you there when you were 7 and your rucksack strap broke and I had to carry a rucksack for the rest of the day. And I thought, oh, like I couldn't just remember where to go. I've always been pretty good at navigating with a map and compass. We're very blessed in the UK to have the best mapping system in the world with Ordnance Survey and Harvey Maps. So I've always had the confidence just to go out and explore. And the Lake District isn't a massive area, really. And you're never really going to be more than a couple of hours walk from some sort of civilization. So it's not like Scotland, where you could be walking for days, or you're going to other places in the world. And worst case scenario, if you're on the fells, you don't know where you are. You run to find water, you follow the water down, and you'll eventually end up near a lake. And if you're near a lake in the Lake District, you're near a town, so you could get a bus back home or ring your mum and dad. So I wanted to just keep pushing and seeing what I could do. Started properly fell running, which then meant, well, I want to do a race. And we're also blessed up here in that from March till September, you can race twice a week if you wanted to. And the races are about £5 a race, if that. So it's not an expensive sport. Off you go. And then I was getting better and better and better. In my early, like 23, 24, I was running really well. And then, everything in my life, which, sort of brings us on to the film, I guess, that all started happening. So 10 years I've been racing now. And this year I actually did the first fell race I'd ever done, like this year. So it was like a 10-year anniversary of me doing that race, which was quite nice to go and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny you talk about your dad, and my dad was very much a backcountry skier. The stories that I've heard him tell me about where they took me, and I wasn't a skier. Like he obviously wasn't taking us young kids up to, these summits and bowls where they're climbing up on crampons for 3 kilometers with skis on their back. And we're talking like crampons that they made in their garage, like not proper crampons. So it's, hearing those stories about, again, seeing and hearing the stories about my dad doing those things, and then you get into it, and it's very different when your parents are telling you to go up the hill as opposed to you choosing to go up the hill when you're an adult, right? It's like, you're like, I'm choosing this now. As a kid, you're just like, man, I wish I had a different thought process back then, and found a way to enjoy it a little bit more, and not thinking of it as like a punishment each weekend that my parents are taking me hiking, right? Like sitting on the middle of the trail with my snacks, having a cry.
I was once going up Scafell Pike, and I heard this lady said to her kids, and he was moaning, he was like dragging his arms on the floor, and he's like, when are we getting to the top? And she said, don't worry, Henry, just think how good the celery sticks will taste at the top. And I thought, what a poor kid to be lured to the top, and all he's getting as a reward is a celery stick. Like when we were kids, it was like Mars bars or Jelly Babies or Snickers or something like that, like something good, not a celery stick.
It's like giving a dog a high value treat. Like you need to make sure that that's worth the worth the climb, right? So you talked about getting into fell running, and 23, 24, you're kind of at that like peak fitness where you're doing really well and things are moving and your body is responding really well until it wasn't. So how did you decide what you were going to allow yourself to become next in that, moving from this fell runner who was at their peak of their fitness, and now your body is screaming, no, like this isn't working for me. So what was that transition, not only for your body, but also your mindset?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because I was running. I could tell you, I could take you to the very rock where it first happened. And in my mind, I go back to that. So not so much now. I used to go back to that time all the time. And it was coming down on the Fellside route, 17th of August. And coming down, I was 7th at a time in the race. And it's like everything I ever ate just came out of me. And I had to hide behind a rock. And it was terrifying. And I'd agreed later that night to go and help some people on the Bob Graham. And I didn't want to let them down. And I thought, well, their needs are greater than mine at the moment. I've just got really bad diarrhea or something. And I was in denial for a long time, thinking I've eaten something, it's food poisoning, I mustn't be very well. And my mind was very much I was too scared to ever admit defeat. And I've got this thing in my life where I'm always really scared about giving up on things, because it's like when you admit defeat, you've reached like rock bottom about stuff. And I know we all have to do things in life that we don't want to do, but yeah, giving up for me is a bad thing. And I went downhill very quickly, and I had days where I was sitting on the toilet for 8 hours a day, and all that was coming out was blood, and it was terrifying. I was literally wasting away, and I was in my early 20s, and the days when I'd be on the toilet that long, I couldn't get off the toilet because my legs had gone so numb, and pins and needles, and I just couldn't get off. So I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't talking to people, and I'd lost that whole life that I had. And it was like grieving, really, because I wasn't then the Jacob Tonkin that I was 6 months ago. And yeah, I've always been very open with my parents, and I've always had a very, very good relationship with them, that I can talk to them about anything. But there was even times then when I was like, there are things happening physically and sort of in my head now that I don't want to talk to my mum and dad about. And yeah, annoyingly, it took me 18 months to get a proper diagnosis. And I don't often think diagnoses actually help anything at times, because quite all the time, like with my line of work, if I tell someone it's Achilles tendonitis, they wear it like a badge of honor. It's like, oh, I've got Achilles. And then they cling on to that and they'll never let go. And sometimes it is what it is. Sometimes it doesn't need a label. Sometimes deep down that there's something up, and maybe sometimes that's enough. And so I got to this rock bottom. I got a diagnosis, and I got to the stage where I didn't care what the diagnosis was. Some doctors had thought I didn't have very long left to live, because I was on such a high dose of steroids, and I had started thinking, if this disease doesn't kill me or whatever it is, then I'll end up doing it myself. And it was bad, and there was some really, really dark days, and I didn't really feel like anyone who I could talk to would understand. And I'm very fortunate. I've got some brilliant, brilliant friends in my life who would help me through everything, but they just carried on treating me like normal, which is what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I just needed a little bit more. And I would never ask them to understand, because I didn't understand. But it took me a while to figure out what I actually needed. And then, as often things in life happen when you're not expecting them, it turned out what I needed was to go and get a dog. And then that was the reason. And suddenly, when I decided that, everything just felt, this big black cloud over my head just disappeared. And I was like, shit, I'm going to get a dog. And I was like, yeah. And we'd never had one as kids at all. Didn't have a dog. And I was like, well, that's the answer. And then, we went and got him George. I called him George because my granddad calls all of us grandkids George. Doesn't matter if we're boy or girl. And I always said to him, like, well done for picking such a good gender-neutral name. So I thought anything I do call him, he'll just get ignored, so he'll get called George. So that's why he was George.
Before we get to George, I want to just quickly go back to the part where you said that you felt like nobody else would understand. I know that's what I felt with my PTSD, depression, anxiety diagnosis, working in health and emergency services for years, that it was like this level of shame or shame, guilt, whatever you want to call it, that like I should be stronger, and like this shouldn't happen to me. So nobody else is going to get this. Like I'm not going to tell anybody. There's nobody I can talk to. And I know that that is like a place that a lot of people go to. And I think that's human nature. I think that's like our kind of safety mechanism and survival mechanism of like, well, if I share this, what are people going to think? Right. And I would imagine being a fell runner, that probably became a little bit of your identity. And now having that seemingly taken away with the illness, that means a part of you is like gone. Like it's a piece of you is now in your, brain and your psyche is missing. So how did you come to terms with the not running piece? Because I know for me that was a really tough time for me, until I decided to run for different reasons. And I would imagine getting George, coming back to that now, is like another reason to figure out another way. It doesn't have to be the way that it was, but
Yeah, yeah,
now it's time to figure out another way. So
yeah,
how did you figure out that other way alongside George?
yeah. Well, I think I realized quite quickly on, because I still was trying to run and I was just ignoring it. And I was getting up in early morning runs and I was stopping 7 times in like, for 7 times the toilet within 3 miles. So, and I couldn't run, but I was like, no, I am going to run. Like, I'm not going back to that not giving up. Like, if I stop running, that will feel like I've given up. And I wasn't racing, but I was going to watch my mates at races, and I was walking up and I was asking how we're getting on, and no one knew what I was out with, because again, I hadn't really told anyone, that many people. And yeah, so my brain, I don't want to say it changed, because it hasn't changed. Like, I still fundamentally still want the same things that I always have done, but I had different people and just became a bit more aware of the big picture rather than focusing on little individual things, and looking at the big picture of sort of, why am I running in the first place? Well, it's to go and explore. And I've gone from exploring to then focusing on racing, a very small part of what I enjoy doing. But ultimately, did any of us start running to win races? Like, you don't, do you? You start running because you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
The 1% did that. The
yeah,
1%
yeah,
of people, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But like, most of us are never going to win races consistently. So we run because we enjoy that. And I was like, well, I'm feeling crap anyway because I'm really ill. Why don't I just start focusing on what I actually enjoy? And what do I enjoy? Well, it's going new places and seeing things. So I'll do that. So then the racing sort of just disappeared for a big chunk of time, like a year or so. And when that went, I just wasn't aware. Like, I could be around races and I didn't have that, oh, I'm missing out, like FOMO.
Mm-hmm.
And that took a big chunk of it away. And I thought, no, I can still be Jacob Tonkin and not race for a bit. I can still do this by actually plotting a bit of a plan to eventually get back to what I actually enjoy doing, and not what it's perceived of me that I should enjoy doing. So I guess I just became a bit more self-aware. And I do like to think I'm a pretty, like, I help a lot of people, and I don't ever really ask for much help back. But I essentially felt like I was cashing in a few favors to get some help back off some mates. And then by doing that, realized, oh, I can still enjoy everything and not add another thing to make myself feel bad. So yeah, I think I just started looking big picture and focusing on what Jacob Tonkin actually likes rather than what's perceived of him to like.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so when I got George, obviously as a tiny little puppy, you can't really do much with them. But I wasn't running as such, but I was walking and hiking up places. So I just put him in a rucksack and take him. And then we started ticking off all this, which are fells, which a man called Alfred Wainwright wrote about, and he did hand-drawn pictures. If you've never seen the books, they're amazing. If you Google him, they're all hand-drawn. He basically didn't like his wife, and he used to come up here every weekend, and he'd just fells and draw different routes, post one of them as his favourite views, and publish these books. And they're amazing books, but people now tick them all off. And some people spend a lifetime doing them. And I decided I wanted to take George up them all. The first ones, we were going places which I either hadn't ever been, or I hadn't been since I was a kid. And I was taking George to the summits of them. And that for me was just brilliant, because it was like you could see his eyes lighting up. And it was like, wow, what's all this? And I felt the exact same. So yeah, the emphasis went in my life from competing back to adventuring. And I think even when I was ill, I was competing and comparing myself the whole time to what I was like beforehand. And then I thought, well, I'm a different person now, so there's no point in me comparing and competing against that. Like, if I do this now, one day I might get that life back. But at the time, I didn't care because I was having such a good time because I was taking charge everywhere.
I would imagine that fell running, the way that I like to say this, my background with ultra running and racing and doing some, crazy distances like 200-mile plus distances, fell running is filled with, weather, hills, terrain, all these variables that, you encounter that are difficult. Like you're choosing to do actively choosing to do these hard things. And I'm a firm believer of like, we choose our hard. So when the hard that happens to us in our lives that eventually like we don't choose comes along, hence your diagnosis,
Yeah, yeah.
now you have all of these things to pull from, like these hard things that you chose. Now you can kind of turn those around and go like, okay, what lessons did I learn that I can bring into my healing? So
Mm.
how did that work for you from coming from that fell running background and doing all these hard things and running this terrain? How did that come into play for you with the actual diagnosis and your healing journey?
Yeah, well, yeah, you are right in that you kind of think, well, I can run, 20 miles over fells and do 12,000 foot of ascent in one go. I can get through anything. So you do have that mental toughness that comes from it. And I mean, I'm very, very fortunate, like I've said, that I come from a very open family and supportive family. And, I carry that forward with everything I do. So I am very open with people. I do like to talk to people. It's my way of showing that I care a lot of the time is by having these conversations. And um, I, yeah, I needed to keep that going in order for me to start to feel, and I had to just get them connections back. So I had to start. Had a period of time where I isolated myself because I've been sat in the toilet, and the thing I was craving was that connection, and the just seeing your mates and giving them a hug and whatnot, and then you'd go and have a run, you'd have a hug, you'd have a cup of coffee afterwards, and get that side of it back. But I think a lot of it is embedded even on those, like we said before, when your mum and dad drag you out and suddenly you don't want to be going out there, you realize that you are actually pretty tough and you can endure a hell of a lot of stuff. So I did always know that I could get through it and I could be that person. There were times when I doubted that because of things doctors had said, and then that sort of changed again when I got George, because then I wasn't necessarily doing it for me, I was doing it for George. So it kind of became a bit more external. I thought, well, yeah, I've got myself sorted now because I've remembered that I am tough. I can get through most things. I can go across the fells when the wind and rain are battering you in the side of the head, and all you want to do is drop home. So that person is still there, but this is like Jacob Tonkin version 2.0, and he's maybe even better than the one before. And I've always done quite a lot of visualization as well, and I do enjoy sitting and thinking, trying to picture myself as one of my heroes in life, which is usually like my dad and my granddad. And I would think, if they're in my situation now, what would they do? And I asked myself that question a lot when I was ill. And 9 times out of 10, the answer was, we'll go outside and go and talk to someone. And then I started doing that, and I'm just sort of pretending to be my dad and granddad. And that, for me, gave me another lot of strength and another lot of good motivation to keep pushing and focusing on the the healing side of the whole illness and fiasco.
Yeah, and you talk about connection and family and having, I'm of the mindset that like a lot of the reason why we choose to run and do these things are the connections that we make with the individuals that we're with. I have lifelong friends that would drop everything for me in a lot of
Yeah,
instances, and having those connections is pretty huge. You talked about at one point you thought about not being here. And that's obviously a very hard thing to, have come up in your thoughts, because we don't choose our thoughts. It's something that just comes up for us. And to
Mm.
have that come through, what was that like for you in your body? Like, what did you feel in those moments when that thought initially crept up? Like, if this doesn't get sorted, like, what's the point of being here if I can't have a way of living like with dignity? Like, what's the point? What was that feeling like?
Initially, it's quite scary, but I did think, well, maybe there's a reason why I'm thinking like this. Like maybe I am actually, maybe this is it, you know. And I thought maybe it's just my brain saying your body's packing in now. It's maybe time before it all goes. So it was scary to begin with, and I'm very lucky. I haven't had them thoughts again. And I did, they kept cropping up for about a 2-3 month period when I was at my absolute worst. And I did just think, it wasn't a case of everyone would be better off if I wasn't here, because I don't think that. It was a case of I don't know if I'm strong enough to put up with this the whole time,
Mhm.
and mentally and physically strong enough. I had no idea what was happening to my body. Mentally, I was trying to dig into all these reserves I've got of no, don't give in. You can do hard things, but that at the time was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. And I just thought, well, maybe it's a matter of time before I eventually do give up. And so I had a lot of conflicting thoughts and feelings, and sometimes it was as if that was possibly going to be the right thing to do. Other times it was like, no, don't be like, what are you being stupid for? You can get through this. So it took me a long time to sort of admit to quite a lot of people that I'd had those thoughts, because I was a bit ashamed and embarrassed I'd had them when everyone around me was giving me so much support. But there's times where you can have all the support in the world, but it's just not what you need at that moment, isn't it? And yeah, so it's just a whirlwind of emotion, really, when you start thinking about that, because sometimes you think it's right, sometimes you think it's wrong, and yeah, so I did, years later, talk to people about it, but for many years I just kept it to myself, and
Mhm.
and I met a very, very good doctor who I didn't even tell him about that, but he was the first person who treated me like a human and not just a number. And he sat down, he looked me in the eyes, and the first thing he ever asked me about was what my favourite is. And I said Great Gable, and he said, oh no, sorry, I said Blencathra because that's my favourite. His was Great Gable, and he said, I bet you can't wait to go back up there again. And this was after doctors had told me I wouldn't run anymore.
Mhm.
And that's kind of when a lot of it was lifted, because I was being treated like a human again. And in those periods where I was thinking I'm not going to get through this, was when I don't think I was even treating myself as a human. I think I was just treating myself as this mystery disease. I was just full of woe and sorrow, and I didn't know what to do. And then I met this doctor, Mr. Mansfield, at the RVI, and that was another one of these cloud lifting moments, you know. And yeah, so yeah, in answer to the actual question, a lot of things went through my head.
Yeah.
But I think that's what happens with it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
And
I don't think there's a
yeah,
straightforward answer.
and like you touched on, your identity becomes the disease. It becomes the
Yeah,
thing, my correlation, and again, two different stories, different paths from a medical side of things, but like my identity became my PTSD. Like I acknowledged myself as like somebody who had PTSD, and I don't like the term, PTSD survivor or anything like that, because I feel like I'm just like re-identifying myself by the disease, and I'm like, that's not who I am. Like that
no,
has nothing to do with me. That's something that happened to me, but that's
yeah,
not who I am as an individual. And I don't want to identify as that, not in a bad way. Like, I'm sure the things that I had to go through are things that I was meant to go through. I'm a firm believer of that, and not in a great way. But
but
the fighting,
I don't say my Crohn's.
yeah,
I won't ever say, oh, my Crohn's disease.
hmm,
I would say the Crohn's,
yeah,
But now, I don't think I've got Crohn's disease anymore. Like, whenever they do tests and everything, it's still there
Yeah.
when they do a biopsy, but visually there's no signs of it, and they've got to do a biopsy to show that it's still there. But I haven't had a proper flare up in years,
Yeah.
so
And
I don't.
words are powerful. The
Yeah,
things we
yeah,
say to ourselves are extremely powerful, and your body takes those things in and manifests them in different ways. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at it. Is like you
yeah, yeah.
don't identify as the thing or the disease or the
No,
situation or even like the depression that was the symptom of
yeah,
the disease. Depression is one of those things. Like depression wants us alone. It wants us isolated. It wants us by ourselves, not connecting with people, not having family.
yeah,
It's like, and that's why I always say to people, like, what's the number one thing that you would suggest for somebody going through depression or anxiety? I said, find the connections and the friends and the family before you get to that place, because
yeah.
you're going to need them more than you ever thought.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So moving through the disease and through these thoughts and these intrusive thoughts that come up, here comes George Pfeiffer Tonkin into your life, this little puppy moving up and down the fells with you. What I want to know is did George become Jacob's personality, or did Jacob become George's personality through that in order to move through it?
George very quickly became a Tonkin and a Parkins. So his middle name Pfeiffer was
Yeah.
my nana's maiden name,
Okay.
and her I can't remember if it's her dad or her granddad was, I think his dad was German, and he moved over to the UK after the First World War, and he was Pfeiffer, Pfeiffer, and everyone got really twitchy because he was a German after the First World War. So the same as putting on a comedy mustache or nose, he got rid of the P, and everyone suddenly knew him as Mr. Pfeiffer, and they thought that was a British name, and he was okay. So I thought that's going to be George's middle name. So George quickly became a Tonkin and a Parkins, which is my mum's maiden name, and he had a lot of the values that we Tonkins have, which is all about making all these connections. And I know he was a puppy, but us five Tonkins were his five favorite people in the world, and he would never pass on an opportunity to spend time with us or to jump up and give us a cuddle or jump on the sofa. And it was like he understood that as a family, our job is to bring everyone together the whole time. And so he brought out the best in me. And I think as a family, we brought out the best in him. And yeah, he just understood the assignment. He came, and it was like, oh yeah, all you lot in this house need me for a different reason,
Mhm.
and he did it. It was amazing. And from never having dogs as a family to suddenly having George, just the dynamics of things and how the family changed. And we had George through the whole COVID lockdown, and he was getting 5 walks a day, one with each of us, kind of thing. We all wanted George time with him, and he was my dog, but he was our family dog, and yeah, he's a true Tonkin, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both know I have Nova. She is my running dog through and through, and I can 100% relate to that. She absolutely loves my mom and dad. She loves my two kids, 8 and 10. Like, she knows when they're leaving, she knows when they're coming back. It is just like such a beautiful relationship. And I'm always a believer that, dogs come into our lives because they were always meant to be ours.
Yeah,
It's like that dog was meant to be mine. And I'm sure just in the conversations that we've had, like, I'm sure you feel probably very similar to what George was for you.
yeah, yeah.
What I always try to explain to people what it's like running with a dog as your main training partner all the time. And it's such a hard thing to kind of put in a way that is like words just can't do it justice most of the time, in my opinion.
Oh no,
I forget about my watch. I forget about the data or how fast I'm moving. It's literally just like the two of us together moving through life and, just experiencing it together. So what was that like for you with George? Just like not the Strava, not the data, just like moving through the fells. Like, what did that feel like alongside George as you came back into fell running, worked through your Crohn's, worked through the issues that you were having, and now you have this dog that is with you all the time that you didn't have before. Like, what was that transition like to fell running with George all the time now?
Well, when we started being on the fells, it was me carrying him. Then he got too
Mhm.
big, so then he was having to walk a bit, carry a bit, and it was always like when you get to 1 year old, then you can start coming for some runs, and we can do this and do
Yeah.
that. And everything was always mapped out, and I couldn't wait to start doing it. And I remember the first time we ran downhill together. And like downhill's what I'm best at in a race, and we ran downhill. And I was like, this is amazing. And George was like, what? We get to do this. And we just ran down. I got to the bottom, and yeah, we'd ran like a mile, and we were both knackered because I was still recovering. George was only just small. And I just thought, yeah, this is going to be it. And there's like, as you've probably got millions of photos and videos on your phone of running with them.
Mhm.
And there's one of them, which I think about all the time. I was running across the top of Lattrig, just on the outskirts of Keswick, and he was running alongside me, and he just looks up at me, and his tongue's hanging out, and I go, "Send it on, son!" And he just runs a million miles an hour. He gets to the summit, he stops, and he waits, and he looks at me, and that for me is most probably how I'll feel if heaven's real. You're coming into heaven. That's
Mhm.
how I'd be. That's how I'll go into it, just that moment. And it's indescribable when you're just in sync. And like when you're running with another person and your legs are in sync.
Mhm.
When you do that, but with your dog, it's even cooler because they've got four legs, and suddenly your six legs between you are
Yeah.
going all the same, and it's
Yeah.
just it's such an amazing feeling. And
Yeah.
like George was a border collie, and he's literally born to be on these very fells.
Mhm.
People used to go like, he's a really cool dog because he'd be bounding over rocks and he'd do all the edges and all sharp stuff, and yeah, you just think he is a cool dog, and he can do that because that's what he was born to do. And yeah, when you sync up with your dog, it's a very special feeling, isn't it?
It's yeah, there's like you said, there's nothing to describe it other than to like bring your friends with you and have them run with her for
Yeah,
them to like understand it on a different level. And yeah, I mean, me attempting my 100 miles with Nova, like we had done a lot of big stuff before, but nothing like what we did. And yeah, just how in sync we were the entire time. And that was like I think that run for me now has completely changed my opinion on the racing, the adventures, those types of things. Like, yes, I'm still gonna want to do them, but the thing that drives me is the adventure.
yeah,
That's really what it is. It's coming from that. It's not coming from that ego place of hitting getting on the podium or beating anybody. It's like it's that soul driven place where it's like, man, I get to move through life with this like furry thing that's just like
yeah,
with me and loves me unconditionally alongside all the other connections and family that I have. It's yeah, it's a beautiful relationship to have be a part of, no
it is.
matter what your dog is, even if it's 1K to 300 miles, whatever it is. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't matter how long it is. It's a matter of like just being together. So
Oh, definitely.
so your film George, I've watched it multiple times. I'll be honest. It's pretty beautiful, raw. What was the hardest thing about allowing yourself to be seen in that way through your Crohn's and through George?
Well, the film wasn't ever planned to be made. So I'm very, very lucky that one of my very good friends is James Appleton, who made the film. And this is his picture, one of his pictures behind my head. This is Blencathra, my favourite fell. And James just has a camera with him the whole time. And the day after, a spoiler for the film, but a day after George died, I messaged James and I said to him, have you got any pictures of me and George together? Because we've all got loads of pictures of your dog, but how many times are the pictures of us together? And like you'll feel like this with your film as well. And James went, whoa, shit, I've got all this footage. I'll send it over to you. I said, oh, brilliant. And then he buggered off making a film in Antarctica for 6 months. And so I didn't hear anything. So I thought, oh, it'll be all right. He'll send it when he gets back. And he came back, and we went out for a run together. And I was putting down slate stones on the tops that George didn't get to go to. And he said, what's this? And I said, oh, I'm doing this. So he said, oh, I'll video this as well. So he got some video of that. And he said, I'm making you something. And I thought, oh, right, okay. So he then buggered off to Madagascar for 6 months, didn't hear anything from him. And I'm like, oh, well, it'll happen. And then he came back, and it was actually five years ago on Halloween this year that we did all the speaking part of the films, like the interview with me. And still had no idea what we were going to make, or I had no idea what was being made or anything. It's just, I'll ask you some questions. So we did that. And then we'd have another couple of runs, and I was putting the last one down on my 30th birthday, so 2 years ago. And he said, I'll come and get that, and then that'll be it. And he did. And then in August last year, I got an email off him whilst he was away in another country, and it just said, I'm sorry it's taken you so long. It's taken me so long, but here you go. And he sent me the film.
Wow.
And so we all went to my mum and dad's house, apart from my younger sister who was in Canada at the time, and we watched that together. And I was like, oh my God. And it was indescribable. And I was bawling my eyes out. And I just thought, well, it's too good for me to just have this. So I went to the local cinema around the corner, and I showed it to the man there, and he was just silent. And I was like, oh, he's going to be like, thanks so much, but, it's all right. And I looked, and he was bawling his eyes out. And I was like, oh, and he said, we'll put this on. So we put it on. It sold out and sold out. And like, my family's very well known around here, so a lot of people came for that. And then it started going all these film festivals, and so it was never meant to be what it's become.
That's cool.
I think the best thing I can say about the film is that the entire film, everything has been done by one person, which was James. And so the list of credits at the end is just James. Whereas there's some of the ones I've been to watch, and it's a 5-minute film, and their list of credits is 5 minutes long because there's that many people been in part. James is just so good at what he does. And he's only done this out of the love of his own heart for me, because he knew what his friend was going through after losing George. And I've got everything I could possibly have out of just watching that film that one time with my mum and dad. And everything else that I've done has been to show off how good James is. And I've been really lucky that I've gone into schools, and I've been in film festivals all around the world. It's been in film festivals all around the world, but I will never claim that it's my film, because it's not. It's James' film. I'm just part of it with George. And so I think, like, I don't open up any more in the film than I do in real life with people. So I didn't ever think, oh, I'm doing this for a film, and sound really sorry about myself. Like, James was just always there when life was happening. So when we first showed it, a lot of people said, oh, was it scripted? I was like, no, it's just amazingly, he was there with a camera to capture these runs, to capture us putting the stones down, to capture me when I was really ill. And it's one of them things which it almost was meant to happen, because it's all just slotted together perfectly. So the opening up for it comes naturally to me. And I don't know, if I'd known what it was going to become, I would like to think I wouldn't have acted any differently, but maybe you would, thinking it's going to be shown all around the world. But yeah, because of it being made purely from a point of love and respect, and I suppose admiration for one of his friends, and George loved James, absolutely loved him. He used to jump up and hit him in the testicles every single time he saw him. He was perfect height for it as well. So James just understood, and he's made this, and Like I don't think I need any credit or anything for it. Like it's all James, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's James who's talking at the start of the film. So that's his real voice, and that's the only time he's in the film, I think. Other than that, he's not put himself in.
Yeah, that's beautiful that it was this organic piece of like film that was never meant to be anything, and I
Yeah,
think that makes it even more special,
yeah,
which is probably why, again, like watching it, 2, 3, 4 times already, myself and my wife, and shared it with a bunch of other friends, and that's actually how I got to see it. Was a friend of mine here
is
shared it
it?
with me.
Ah, right,
That's how I came across it.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's just kind of like funny how those like you said, connections. Like
yeah,
that's how these
yeah,
things happen, right?
yeah,
Um, so clearly, losing George is like of. I mean, you briefly touched on it. We don't want to give too much away in the film, but losing George is clearly a defining moment of moving through Crohn's. George helping you through the healing, the depression, the isolation, all of those things. Can you just walk us through what you felt and what you chose to do with that grief of losing George?
yeah. Well, in the film, I mentioned how he's like Mary Poppins in that he came into my life when I needed him, and the night before he died, I'd let him out for a wee, and he wouldn't come back in the house. And I was like, "Come on, mate, it's bedtime," and he wouldn't come in. And I went outside and sat outside, and we were looking at the stars. And it was a really nice starry night. And Rachel comes outside, and she was like, "Oh, she's a science teacher, so we were talking about the stars." And George put his head on my chest, and he did a great big sigh, and he got up and he walked into the house. And the next morning, we went up to the northeast. We left him at my parents' house, and he had his accident, and he died. And George knew at that moment that that was the last time he was going to see me. And it's like, you've got your life back. You've just been and done all these things. You don't need me anymore. Like, I wanted him. Like, hell, I wanted him. But it's like he knew that he'd done his job. And and he went. And I I was like 100 odd miles away when he was having his operation. I drove back as quick as I possibly could. And I found out phone call that he hadn't made it through the operation. And I went and picked him up, and I have never experienced anything as hard as that in my life. And I it was awful. My mum and dad weren't there. They were away on holiday. They came back. I've never seen my dad that upset before. I don't know if I ever will see him as upset as losing George. And it was it was just the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. But I I, I just have that feeling that he knew that that was his last. That was it, and that he'd done his job. And it did give me a bit of comfort in that. And then obviously when I started going around putting the George stones down, every summit I'd just say something to him like "Love you, mate," or I'd think about him, and then I'd carry on. And then the last one on my birthday, I went up with my best mate Craig and James and Christina, and put that down, and it didn't feel the end. And it was very much that's the end of a chapter, because we were literally writing everything in a book about all the stones, all the trips he'd had. We've still got the book. But in many ways, this film is the last George
Mhm.
Stone. And it's, it keeps him alive. I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched it. And yeah, I often skip through all the bits of me talking and watch the runs with George, and when George is on screen. And I just, it's obviously really sad to watch the film back, but I can watch the film and remember exactly how I felt in all those moments. And so I can experience the emotions again, but I haven't cried watching it for a few months now, because I've got past it being sad. I see the beauty in it, and I think about all the connections that have happened and all the connections you see through the film, and the main one being one man and his dog.
Mhm.
And that for me that's how I'll always remember George. And I remember crying when I was driving home, and I just thought, I hope I never forget him. I think that's what I was scared about, this idea of forgetting him. And now I've been blessed with James making this. Where I can't ever forget him now. And I've been really lucky. I've had chances to go all around the place, having conversations with amazing people, and I've spent time with fantastic folk, and like it's all helped me massively. But I'm ultimately doing the things that I, as Jacob Tonkin, am good at, which George has always emphasised that for me, which is making connections and having these bonds with people, and that's how I get through life. And George has always helped me remember that, and inspire me to carry on doing it.
I was just about to ask you one lesson that George has taught you, but I think that's the lesson right there.
Yes.
That's the lessons, like make those connections and make the time for people.
Yeah.
Now, I got a chance before we started recording to see Hector. So Hector Robert Tonkin is your next dog that is now with you. I know it's hard for a lot of people to typically get another pet when they lose one. So what was that like, kind of picking Hector, and do you see George in Hector?
So Hector's dad is George's brother, which was a part of the reason why I'd go. But I've never gone to get either of my boys with the intention of getting a dog. It's always been a Harry Potter wand chooses the wizard moment. And yeah, farmer just down the road told us that they had a litter of pups and that the father was George's brother, and I was like, oh, you bugger.
You're like, well, we're getting a dog.
Yeah. So we got Hector's named Hector after my nana, who surprisingly wasn't called Hector, but she never ever swore. And instead of swearing, she'd say Hecky Bobs. So he's Hector Robert, which gets shortened to Hecky Bobs. And yeah, Hector's just turned 5. So he's now the oldest dog I've ever had. And he's brilliant. And me and Hex sync up so well when we're out running. And, I've run more miles with Hector than I have with George. Hector very much gets second child syndrome in the family. So anything he does at my parents' house, my dad's
it's fine.
My dad's like, oh, George wouldn't have done that. George is this little angelic saint that's, there's a picture of him on the top of the bookshelf, and Hector's the little hellraiser. But yeah, I mean, getting another dog, you never replace a dog you've lost. No. But getting another dog helps you recover and grow a bit. And I'll be when the time comes and Hector's not here, I'll be in bits. But I am when I lost George, I did have a bit of a feeling that I'd been robbed of a life because he was so young. And heck, he's 5, and like I am excited for his little smelly old, and he can't do anything. And like all I want to do is go for a run with him, but I'll be able to look at him when he's like 13 and think, like, he's had such an amazing life. And, he's 5 years old, border collie still, and he's in his absolute prime. And, we're doing a 25-mile run on Saturday, and he won't bat an eye at that. But he's just, I don't want to be without a dog, but I will never say that I'm replacing a dog with another dog. Because dogs, especially border collies for me, I am a border collie. If anyone says, what type of animal would you be? It would be a border collie. It would be a border collie that was born in this valley, which is where my 2 lads are from. And that's just me. And, the life I live means that my dogs can live the best life that they possibly can. And I will hopefully be doing that for the rest of my days.
Yeah. Have you heard that phrase that you're your friend, your dog is your friend for life, but you're their friend for like ever, right? Like that's their entire life, right? Like,
well, we are, and when you think our dogs, like we're like immortal creatures to them, aren't we? Because they're here, they grow old, and we don't ever really look that different, really. In like 10, 15 years, you're not really. But to the dogs, we are these immortals that they unconditionally love us with anything you do. And it's like when you go to your dog, and it's all about the tone of the voice when you talk to a dog, isn't it? So if you say like, I love you loads, they'll be like this. And you could say something really nasty in a nice voice, and they're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always the tone, right?
It is,
It's always the tone. It doesn't matter what you're doing or your body
yeah,
language, whatever that is, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's such a wonderful story. I mean, unfortunate George no longer being with you, but now, I mean, having like a family member of George's is with you. So
yeah.
it's like he's still with you in some way. And I think that's such a beautiful, I didn't know that, which is so cool to hear. Um, I want to circle back to going through Crohn's, going through the mental health side of things alongside of this, George supporting you. You know, if someone listening to this is, you know, stuck in life, sick, going through their own diagnosis, injured because they can't run, or just, just beaten down, what is one really powerful step that you would point them in the direction of based on your story and what you have experienced yourself?
I mean, for me, it's all about communication and the connections that you have. And we'll all have different people who we trust more than others, and we'll all have your favorite person in the world. I I in my life, if I've got a problem, I always go to my favorite person in the world first. Which it was my nan and my granddad. They're now no longer with me, so it's my mum, and I go to my mum before I go to anyone, and she knows everything that happens in my life. I can't keep a secret from her. Diagnosis is about autoimmune disease like I've had are really, really difficult because it's about your autoimmune system and everyone's is completely different. So what works for me doesn't work for someone else in a medical sense. So I would go for the connections first, and I would have those connections, have those conversations with the people who you love most. And then from that, you'll together can work out a bit of a plan. Because I have loads of people asking me, I think I've got Crohn's, what should I do? And I point them in the direction of the doctor I saw because he treats you like a human. But I got on with him so well because you have a who treats you like a human, which usually is most probably going to be your favourite person in the world, whoever that is.
Mhm.
So anything you are going through, and I see it with work people who are injured for periods of time. I've got friends who are waiting diagnosis at the same time, and all I can do is keep them talking. Because if you lose the talk and you lose that connection, like we've said, it becomes a very, very lonely place. And you might not mentally get better, or you might physically get better, but your head might still be stuck in that position of me being bad. Whereas I think if you can try and win the mental battles first and keep those connections, which will help, then your outcome will always be better because your outlook's better.
Mhm.
So that's where I'd go. I'd basically, short answer, I'd run to my mum and go, Mum!
Yeah. Yeah. Short answer, go to your mom, or if you
Yeah,
don't have a mom, somebody that's like your mom that is
yeah,
connected
yeah,
to you. Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah.
think connection is a big, beautiful thing. And I think the other side of that is understanding, you said this before, is you wanted people to treat you as if you were normal. And I think that's something that other people who can take away from this, that maybe aren't going through something themselves, but they know that somebody else is going through something, that learning to sit with people in the dark and not try to take them out of it is a very unique skill, that if you can hone that and you are connected with somebody that is going through something, if you can learn to just sit in it with them and just ride the wave and maybe, do something completely different that has nothing to do with the disease or anything like that, or catering to
Yeah,
that, but understanding that you can, go out for a pint, go out for a run, go out for a walk, whatever it is. Like if I can't run right now, well then let's go for a walk and have a coffee. Like still keep
yeah,
that connection even though you're not able to do the things that you were doing before.
yeah. And I would say if you know someone who's in that situation and you don't know what to do, I've found it very helpful myself and other people to just ask them, do you want to be helped? Do you want to be heard? Or do you want to be hugged? If
Mhm.
one of them three, you know, doing one of them threes, that's usually what you'll want. And if it's just the hug, you do the hug, you carry on,
Yeah.
or you keep hugging until you can't hug anymore, or you sit, you listen, or you help. And if you put that onto the person, then they'll tell you exactly what they want, in that moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could keep talking to you for,
I
I'm
know,
sure
yeah.
we could have a whole other episode on just dogs.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. We like to end our conversations with a very simple question. What is one thing that Jacob would like to continue doing or start doing over the next year, whether it be like a mental, physical habit, whatever it is? What is the one thing you want to either continue doing or start doing over the next year to keep you moving in that growth trajectory of what you're on right now?
Well, it's not being scared to take a backward step, actually, because I don't like how life is based on endless, unsustainable growth.
Mhm.
I've messed around with my own running this year. I've tried road running. I've done an ultra marathon. Didn't really enjoy it, and I want to go back to running on the fells. But in my mind, I always say I want to go back to running to the fells as if it's like a negative thing, whereas it's not. That's what I love, and that's
Mhm.
what the true version of me does. So sometimes I think if you try something new, it's not being scared about taking that backward step to do what it is that you actually love in the first place.
Yeah, love that. You don't always have to be moving forward
Yeah.
like
No.
society tells us that we need
Yeah.
to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
You
beautiful.
don't. You don't.
Yeah, I love that. So, where can people find more information about you, about your film? We'll obviously put that into the show notes afterwards and share that with everybody. But just tell us where we can find you and more about the film and where they can find that.
Well, I'll more or less appear anyway if you shine a torch into the light and say something in Cumbrian, and I'll just be there. But no, the film has gone onto YouTube. It's just George by James Appleton. If you search that, then that will come up. And then, yeah, James is James Appleton Photography on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Jacob Tonkin on Instagram and other forms of social media. And yeah, I'm pretty boring. James shares lots of amazing photos, like this one behind me. And yeah, it's that's that. I'm not very good at selling myself. It's a,
No,
typical
but this, hey,
British
you know
thing.
what? You know what? You don't. Not all of us need to be salesmen, right? It's
No.
let the film do the work for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, just want to thank you again, Jacob, for joining us on the Enduring Minds podcast. We are part of the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, home of 8 other incredible shows, and we loved having you on. Love the film. Can't wait for other people to see it. Can't wait for us to share this episode. And until next time, everybody, keep going the distance and breaking the silence together. Thanks so much, Jacob.
Thanks for having me.